Hello humans, hello humans. Probably it's around 8:30 or so in the morning. I'm outside. I don't have a clock or anything. I don't record these on a phone, so I don't have a clue. Lucky I know the date, right? Anyway, saw the first chemtrail plane in the morning. Haven't seen one for a couple of days. We've got stuff going on out here, so there may be interruptions. There was a big razor clam dig, and there's all kinds of tourists. It's Mother's Day. There's things going on at the local, I don't know what the hell you would call it, a rental village or whatever. Anyway, though, so it's going to be interesting to see how much chemtrails they lay out since they're doing their Aurora business, right? The HARP. And so they've been pumping out the Aurora. They can't have you looking up and seeing chemtrails instead of the Aurora. So they've had to slack those off. So you're getting into some level of coordination here on the various different kinds of scams, right? Anyway, and now we've also had the Vatican come out today and pre-announce that they're going to come out on May 17 and announce how they want you to think about apparitions and supernatural phenomena. Okay, which that equals space aliens, and so they're pre-announcing how they want you to think about the space aliens. They're going to be showing up later this summer, and they want you to consider it in this particular, Catholic control structure light. In whatever sense. I don't know if they're going to tell you that they're demons or whatever. So, but nonetheless, here they are pre-announcing their announcement, and so it's kind of a big deal to them. And they're also rolling out their heavy hitter Catholic magicians, the guys they keep in the back room. Mulling over all of the really esoteric aspects of these kind of things and coming up with formulary and such, right? Anyway, so just yet another part of our complexity emerging now that our solar system has risen up to get us in planet Earth and on the moon a sufficient level of galactic center emanations as part of our advancement into the Bronze Age Yuga. It's all ever so complicated, and it's also now risen up to the point of being complex. And that's that's really the thing that people are going to have a hard time wrapping their heads around here as part of hypernovelty is the emergence of complexity into the open, so to speak, right? We've always had complexity, but now we're running into the understanding of our underlying paradigm as being complexity. We used to live in a simple world. It got complicated. We didn't like the complications, but it was manageable. And people used to bitch about the complications and write comic books about them and make jokes about them and all this kind of stuff, We could put a man on the moon, but, well, here's the thing. Did we put a man on the moon? Who knows? So it becomes even more complicated, but that raises it up to a level of complexity, right? So we're coming into an era that we're defining here as having crossed this M9.9 degrees up off of the central galactic equatorial plane, in this era, we're going to shift out of a complicated world of complicated systems into a complicated world of complex systems. The complexity itself, as I said the other day, is going to raise our error levels up and have its own demands on our ability as debuggers of our own systems, right? But here's the thing. Our universe is more complex than we might give it credence to. All right. So uh, if we were a more primitive species, which we had been in the past, and we were all living around campfires at night, and when it got dark, we'd all go into our caves, or artificial caves, our huts, and huddle around because we had no easy source of energy to get light and continue our movement. And so our simple life was limited to this particular period of time due to the availability of light to provide enough ability to see that we could get things done, right? So we were limited by that particular component. In such a world, you would not necessarily be aware of other things going on around you in a meaningful sense, all right? So in such a world, you wouldn't know what electricity was. Um, you wouldn't understand if someone was using electricity if you were to encounter it because it would be outside of your ability to conceptualize. Whether or not you could conceptualize once it was explained to you what it was and what it was doing is actually independent of this particular point here, and that is that we're right at this edge as we move into complexity, where we're likely to discover the complexity and to discover other beings in our universe that are also operating at a level of complexity that we could not before see. All right? It's kind of like the they live glasses. You don't know the space aliens are there until you put the glasses on, right? Until you raise your level of complexity and how you're dealing with light to include those glasses. You don't know um, that this is even a possibility. And so we are in this particular phase. How long it's going to be, I don't know. It may have already occurred, and we're just not made aware of it as the regular schlubs on the planet, right? Um, you got to be a high level in the muckety mucks and high level contacts to the rabbinical councils and the Elohim worship cult in order to get read in on a lot of these cool things that their scientists are discovering. So they may have already tumbled across this. And so um, it would be akin to being able to all of a sudden look at light from our sun in a different way and discover that someone, beings unknown because it's obviously an intelligence, is using our sun as a light um, communications device. All right. And we're just not aware of it. In other words, every damn day, every millisecond, of every second, our sun is broadcasting like a giant Wi Fi. And we're just not aware of it. And it's acting as a communications device for who knows how many different species or whatever the hell, right? And until we raise ourselves up to a particular level of complexity, we're not going to even consider that this may be a possibility. Then one day we'll do something, right? We'll come across an idea, and this guy says, oh, look, we can look at light from the outside in, so to speak, or, obliquely or off on a 90-degree angle. And then all of a sudden, we'll see what these other beings are doing with our sun. And up until then, we'll be clueless, absolutely fucking clueless, because it's a complexity issue, right? You can't see what your mind is not yet prepared to see. And so you'll hear the analogy that a lot of people use in the complexity business, which is really what debugging is, right? So I did a lot of debugging at an international level. They would fly me around to look at code and stuff and debug systems. I was usually very, very, very cost effective for them, no matter how much I was going to charge, because I could get to it really quickly. And I had a particular methodology. It worked really well. And that methodology over time evolved into an understanding of the evolution of complexity and where you have to enter in order to start debugging in any event. Okay, so as I say, we've crossed this M9 threshold. We're encountering more rays of the galactic center emanations. People are going to get smarter, the ones that are here with our DNA now. Bear in mind, Scientists call it junk DNA because they don't know what triggers it. Because they came up out of the Kali Yuga and they think you can squish together enough grit and achieve consciousness. These are dumb, dumb people. All right. So they don't know that perhaps a different kind of emanation, a different kind of frequency or pulsing or something from our sun may indeed trigger all this DNA that they, or some of the DNA that they think as junk. And then it would produce some effect within our bodies or mind that they cannot yet anticipate, let alone even describe the parameters thereof. So So I actually think a lot of this is factual in the sense that I believe that the suns do more than simply provide us with light, right? That there's something far more interesting going on there. Having tea this morning, I'm going to have to go get some more. Got to take the doggo back inside. I'm getting some fog here, so it's not so sunny. In a few minutes, the sun will be over the tree here, but maybe I'll decide to get tea then. Anyway, here's the thing. Okay, so I keep talking about hyper novelty, which we're really deeply into now, and the normies are starting to really experience. They're experiencing it more and more on a daily kind of a basis, right? It's, for instance, hyper normal that New Jersey's largest ever political event would be 80,000 people at a political rock concert, right? Only there's no music there; it was just Trump. And so that's an aspect of hyper novelty that's striking a lot of people. They just can't wrap their heads around it. In any event, here we are into hyper novelty, which occurs pre M9 crossing. And I can get into this at some point if people really care, but it has to do with the level of obscuring mass and how it thins out as we rise up. And so you get little glimpses of it, little bursts, and then you get into it real steady. We're into it real steady now. Anyway, in the past, we had a particular kind of a structure of our social order that we can describe right now, that I'm going to describe right now and label it as authoritarian. Okay? And so, and not in the sense of totalitarian, although it includes that. I'm saying authoritarian in the sense of someone claiming authority over a subject matter. And it can be any kind of a subject matter. Or I claim authority over you as a dean of mathematics in a particular school, right? You happen to be a professor there. And then they extend that authority out as far as they can, just in the normal course of doing business and being human. They extend that authority out as far as they can within our social order. So the dean of that mathematics school is going to write a book on mathematics and try and influence the whole mathematical field in all these other colleges by extending his authority in this field outward. This authoritarian world we came out of had authority based on simplicity. Okay, you could be an authority in a subject globally because most people couldn't wrap their heads around that subject, and the way in which the world was structured was in a simple manner. All right. And so you could have authority upon authority and layers of authority and hierarchy of authority in all these different subjects and all these different ways. Now we're out of that world. Even our military, which is the ultimate hierarchical authoritarian structure, is devolving into distributed, self-actualizing, self-directing nodal networks. Much more resilient, it's a much better strategy for reality and all these different things. But nonetheless, the hyper novelty. As we get into hyper novelty, where everything fractures and complexity emerges, authority, in the sense of authoritarian structure where someone could claim to be an authority, even in a small, limited geographic area, is going to disappear. And so you can't have a high school science teacher claim to be an authority and even impose authority in on his students when they can just look up his bullshit on their phone and call bullshit on him for not getting it right. All right. Now, I happen to like this kind of a world because it means everybody can think for themselves and has the resources to back up that thinking in challenging you. But you'll note that they keep trying to shove us back into more and more authoritarian control because that's what they've got, all they've got. And so they keep trying to shove us back into CCP kind of control so they can go, whew, whew, we've got it, under control. And the fact of the matter is the universe won't support that anymore. That's a dying proposition, and these people are understand time and how things move and to go with the flow, right? And so they're trying to resist the flow of time at a fundamental level and preserve authority in a world of complexity, and that shit don't fly. Um, it's going to get worse that way. The more that they struggle to maintain their ability, so it's kind of like what's his name, the stupid king that was challenged to prove his authority as king and thus the representative of God on earth by going out and telling the tide, stay back, by stopping the tide. Time and tide are right because he just stands out there too stubborn to admit he doesn't control the tide. So anyway, this is kind of where we're at the moment, right? It's the tide of complexity that's overwhelming our social order and overwhelming our planet. And so the it may look like chaos to you, but it's all organized by the infiltrators here in the United States and in the Western world trying to do all of this replacement population and all of that kind of shit. And they think it's going well for themselves. They are attempting to do something that is impossible. They're trying to restrain the tide of complexity and the reactions thereof. And part of the complexity is people are waking up to this shit and are simply not accepting it anymore. They've got a different grasp on the distribution of power and the understanding now that authority doesn't exist any longer. And so I'm not going to accept that there's a climate crisis just because they claim to be an authority and they're pumping it out. Just like a lot of people now are going to say, so we're at this point of complexity overtaking the social order. It's going to be very, very intense 20 or 30 years at a projected length for those people that are alive now because we were bred and born for a complicated for complications in a complicated world, and we're now shifting into a complex world, which is going to require a different kind of a mindset, which is, in essence, almost its own kind of mental evolution as we go forward here. Anyway, I've got to get some stuff done, and conditions are changing out here in a complex way. So, anyway, the payoff for complexity increasing for humans is multiplicitous. You'll be able to do things at a remote way that we couldn't do in the past, right? We're even doing it now with like HARP. They can create aurora on the other side of the planet. So they're doing things at a distance just by the shifting of energy here. This level of complexity is going to increase, especially as we up level into this new media, whatever it is, right? I think it's probably light. We'll probably discover that people or beings are using our sun for things we're not aware of. It may be that it's at another level entirely, which would be the protocrystalline structures, the deep ether constructs that go into making up reality itself. We may find that there's a level of intelligence that's manipulating those in a near real-time fashion that we become aware of, just as it could be light, like I say. And if it's light, there's a lot of, that explains yet another potential program added on to the chemtrails, which would be to obscure the the message, so to speak, coming from the sun for whoever it's intended to go to down here on the planet, if that were the case. That's also an assumption we can't safely make. Anyway, it's going to get more complex from here. There's a lot of different aspects of this complexity that are emerging, and we can go into some of that over these next few days. I think that's it at the moment. Yeah, it's just really interesting that we're now seeing our level of complexity upshift as the Vatican's basically saying, "Oh my God, supernatural phenomena are going to appear, and we need to have you think about it this particular way." So I'm going to really be interested to see how they're exactly saying we should be thinking about it. Anyway, guys. I would say stay aware, but you won't have any choice in that, and we can get at some of this stuff in a few days.